Well,
Yeah,
we can start now.
Yeah, okay, you're starting.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So we were just talking about the significance of Margaret Mead and Philip Mosley's contribution to anthropology and social sciences in general. And you have some interesting artifacts there that kind of provide a unique backstory or unique.
Well, one of the fascinating things is these two people who were my professors at Columbia, among a few others, had a long-standing relationship, and one that is very important for American intellectual history of the 20th century, and one that hasn't been much written about at all. And I think it's very significant in the speeches given in memoriam for Philip Mosley at Columbia in February 1972. She, along with all of these major figures in American academic, administrative history, intellectual history, and people like Marshall Schulman, who is a former, I believe, Assistant Secretary of State. And there's a little note here from William Rogers, who was also Secretary of State. You might or might not recall the name. Okay. So there's a very important relationship, and he's relatively unknown, especially to people in anthropology in general, anthropology specifically, and the social sciences in general, because he did not publish a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
But his hard contact with Mosley, amidst all of these people who were talking about his role in education and government, she goes into the history of his personal life, including down to the elementary school or high school level when he was considering or thinking of going to college. In this case, it was Harvard. And she states, and this puts it way back to 2 years before I was born, I've been asked to speak of the earlier period because I met Phil first in 1927 when he was a Harvard Fellow in Emmanuel College in Cambridge. I knew him before he spent that terrible winter in Russia, which left such an imprint on his personality. And I think I mentioned how that was conveyed to me ever so clearly before I departed for Yugoslavia, about keeping things confidential and staying out of trouble and so on.
Hmm.
Actually, Petraeus could have used some of his words. It is true that he was always somewhat serious, and he always had a tremendous amount of humility, so much, and she goes into his life in high school and how the teachers evaluated. But she says here, and we're talking late 1920s, very early 1930s, this is also that very famous period of Hemingway in Paris and all of that. During his first years in Europe, he had a tremendous appetite for gaiety, and he enjoyed literature, enjoyed the theater. And in those early days, one would have said that he was going to lead a life in which there was a great deal of enjoyment. If one looked at his life later, one would have thought it was an almost puritanical one, because there was so little time ever to be found from teaching, rewriting manuscripts, planning, sitting on committees, carrying the burdens of so many people. And this directly relates to his subsequent roles over periods of time at the Council of Foreign Relations in New York. And of course, he was very close to a lot of the diplomatic figures of his time. But there's also another aspect which has to do just with anthropology and Philip Mosley, and it's something which
And this is from Communal Families.